Hi everyone, I'm Catherine, and I see most of you met Carolyn already. Courtney unfortunately wasn't able to join. She is sick, but she is here in spirit. So as Olivia mentioned, we'll be talking about interviewing and onboarding during a pandemic. And this is a little bit about us. So I am a new hire. I graduated from the MSTC program in 2020. I applied for a technical writer role at IBM in November of 2020. And on January 4th of this year, I got to start my career at IBM. So that's exciting.
And I'm Carolyn. I'm a content designer and strategist at IBM. I've been there since 2012, where I started as a co-op. I work on the IBM cloud team as leading the doc build and operations work, as well as creating enablement assets for all the teams on IBM cloud to use as they create their content. And Courtney's not here, but she is she's a senior content strategist on our team, as well as a terminologist. And she played a large part in the onboarding experience that we had when we were bringing Catherine onto the team. So as Catherine said, even though she's not here, she is very much part of this effort and is here in spirit.
And we'll have a few different topics we'll talk about today, but the first is interviewing. And in this presentation, we've kind of separated out our challenges and our strategies. But from a new hire perspective, some of the challenges I had to consider were distractions. At the time, I lived with 2 roommates, so I had to make sure, that I asked them, hey, I have an interview coming up. Please try not to make any loud noises or like walk across the back of the screen. And I also had to consider appearance, making sure that the lighting was correct and it was focused on me and not illuminating something in the background. And also some technical obstacles. I had never used Cisco WebEx before, which was the tool we were using for the interviews. And so I had to make sure I researched WebEx, knew how to use it, and so I didn't encounter any issues day of the interview. And some of my strategies with preparing for the interview, I made sure to research the company and the specific team I was joining and center questions around company culture. How did Carolyn and Courtney get to where they are? How did they know they wanted to become technical writers? Just questions to show my interest and also let me know if IBM was the right company for me.
Yeah, and then from the hiring team perspective, we had, I guess, many of the same challenges, mostly around making sure that we knew the handoff between a manager who was interviewing before us to our WebEx, and making sure all of that was communicated as well as we could to Catherine, who is, of course, virtual. And so we don't have the literal handoff that makes that a lot smoother when you're doing an in-person interview, and you can literally bring the interviewee from room to room. If she had encountered any difficulties, we needed to have strategies in place to keep in contact with her so we could help her out. And then there's also the different pieces of the interview. So as I mentioned, our manager did an initial interview, and then we had an interview, and then we had a writing exercise portion. And we needed to come up with a way to make that as smooth as possible for our interviewees to, again, go through the different interviews, but then be able to access the materials for the writing exercises, make sure we had really concrete instructions, because it's, again, Catherine could have gotten in contact with us, but it would have been a little bit more difficult than if, it was in person. So just making sure all of that was, accessible and understandable. Doing dry runs, of course, on the writing exercises and working through the files was really important. And so, yeah, those are the main strategies that we put in place to make sure that during the interview process, we, had a professional workflow going on in this particular environment.
Yeah, and the next part, once I joined the team, being virtual, it's kind of hard to meet your teammates because we don't have incidental interactions. There's no bumping into each other on the way to get coffee. We couldn't sit down and have lunch together, sadly. So to conquer that, it's especially important to reach out to your team members through your communication tools. And that's what I did with the new team. I'd reach out to people, say hi, let them know, who I was. And there were some strategies from Carolyn and Courtney that helped me meet the team as well. We had team meetings and onboarding working sessions where we could chat about not only work-related items, but kind of get to know each other as well. And there were questions of the day, like, what's your favorite movie? Or what would you title your autobiography? And that just kind of helped us all get to know each other despite the distance.
Yeah. And I guess from the hiring team perspective, we really wanted, our onboarding employees to not feel like they're just sitting on an island, in a separate place, and to really make them feel a part of the team. And so, of course, Courtney put in place those question of the day strategies. We set up a dedicated, we use Slack and IBM dedicated Slack channels for, our new hires to be able to ask questions in like a safe space, like you're not interrupting, just put your question in there, and then we'll get to it, if not instantly, as soon as we can, and just making sure that they felt comfortable asking. Like there's truly, there's no such thing as a silly question when you're onboarding to a team. That's what we're there for, to make sure everybody's, understanding the company, meeting others in the team, and things like that. So just making sure we had those spaces and communication methods in place, and of course that we were able to communicate that they were there and to feel comfortable in them.
And then probably like the biggest challenge I encountered was learning new tools and technologies. And as the whole theme of this presentation is virtual, it was kind of hard to come on and learn tools and not turn around to my teammates and say, oh, hey, how do I work this? Or how do I access, this thing? So in that sense, it was a challenge to get hands-on opportunities, in that I didn't have someone right beside me walking me through how to use the tool. Asking questions, that was kind of a challenge. And like Carolyn mentioned, there's no silly question, but when I was sitting at a computer asking, however many questions a day through Slack, I started to question, oh, am I asking too many questions? And that's just not the case, even if it feels that way sometimes. It's always good to ask questions. And then for more strategies, we recorded working sessions. So even though I didn't have people right beside me helping me, I could always access the videos of the working sessions and play, pause, go over anything that I may have forgotten or something that just didn't stick. And yeah, Carolyn?
Yeah, so what we did, we knew if you guys saw my previous talk, or if you're familiar with IBM Cloud, as Catherine was saying, there's a lot to learn. IBM is a large company. IBM Cloud is a large product. There's a lot to take in. And so we needed to create an onboarding plan that would cover each of those in, going back to progressive disclosure, in a way that doesn't overwhelm, but informs and builds, so each one builds upon the next. And so we mapped out what our specific onboarding sessions would be with specific agendas. And as Catherine said, recorded them so that they could be referenced both by Catherine and by other people onboarding the team at a later point. Similarly, again, as I said before, we had that onboarding Slack channel to help collaborate. We use Mural as well for, again, other collaboration tools as we're working through any of our tasks. Sharing the wealth of just information, resources. Whenever I am working with any of our new hires and I think of a tip that I think they might find helpful, I try to pass that along, because that's the kind of thing you pick up over years and years of working with the company. And the more I can share that with our new employees, the better. And again, documenting everything that we did, making sure we've got a large set of content around processes for contributing content to the IBM Cloud platform, because as a platform, we're setting the standard for what other the services that are on the platform are doing. So we have extensive documentation there that our new writers could take advantage of. As always, just organization, both in terms of the activities, the tools, the processes, just in general, making sure that everything was done in a thoughtful manner. And then we use GitHub not only for our actual like content, source management, but also for on like other issues. And so we had a specific template for onboarding team members that makes it really easy for new users to provide their information, their email or Slack ID or whatever it might be, and then we can get them integrated into all the different tooling so they have the access that they need, and then they can get rolling without any specific any hurdles there.
Yeah, and definitely the documentation helped me a lot with the next topic, accomplishing tasks. Similar to the previous topic, I didn't have people beside me that I could ask questions all the time. And so some of the challenges I would face, I would ask myself, am I doing this the right way? Am I following the right process? And what's great about that documentation is that it is a large amount of documentation, but that's because everything's so detailed. So when I had a question about maybe uploading an image to the specific software, that whole process is laid out for me. So it was incredibly helpful to have that documentation to walk me through the right process and accomplish my tasks. Some more challenges, it's partial independent work. Because I'm virtual, it's a lot of going away, trial and error on my part, trying as best as I can, figure out issues on my own, and then bringing it back to the team to see, okay, where can I make improvements? Where have I gotten things wrong? What have I done right? And that's reviewing the final product. And so strategies for that, definitely using the resources, both videos, my team members, probably the strongest asset are my team members, and reviewing the documentation.
Yep, and then again in the same vein, having, as I said, we have issue templates for onboarding. We have issue templates for all sorts of stuff. So project management is no exception there, and so we have content experience epics that we have issues for, maintenance items as well, just making sure all the user feedback's incorporated, stuff like that. Again, team member onboarding. That's just a strategy that we use to make sure that writers who are coming in and working on a new feature know the different pieces to look at. So the epic templates might say, make sure you think about, is a video appropriate here? Is there any API implications here? All these other kind of ancillary parts to the main feature itself gets them incorporated into our processes for creating a good content experience without us having to walk through every item, specifically over and over again.
All right, and the exciting part, lessons learned. Of course, it's always great to ask questions, but like I mentioned before, when it's virtual and I'm constantly pinging people like, hey, how do you do this? Sometimes I would tell myself, oh, maybe that's too much, but it's always pushing yourself, reminding myself that it's okay to ask questions, even if it's like 20 or 30 a day. That's completely fine. Talking to team members, like I mentioned before, they're my greatest asset. They're always there to help, making sure I'm reaching out to them with any issue or any knowledge I might need. And reviewing the learning materials, reviewing items before I would go into a working session to make sure I had all the prerequisite knowledge that I needed, and then reviewing after the working session to really make sure that I'm understanding the information and I'm learning what I need to.
Yep, and then just to, I guess, summarize from the hiring team perspective, record everything, and they should really say record and document everything. Whenever somebody has a question, we have a lot of, again, internal wikis and or documentation sets. And if a question isn't answered in there, I try to make sure that I add it. And so that next time somebody comes around, we can point them to the documentation and say, hey, okay, here's how you do this specific thing that you're asking about. Planning a curriculum, again, goes down to organization, to making sure you're covering all the important pieces that you want to cover for your onboarding team members, from what the product is, who works on it, what does it do, to how you actually go about creating content for it. And then most important, I would say, is being available for those questions and just, you know, making yourself available through any all means possible, so that the new hire feels comfortable asking questions, and of course they're answered in a timely manner. So building that trust with your new team members is really important. That's it.
That's it. Thank you.